During dinner, my uncle slammed the door in my face and told me I wasn't part of the family before kicking me out. My name is Maya, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the family ghost. At 28, I've mastered the strange balance of being both essential and invisible, needed when something has to be done, forgotten when it's time to celebrate. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house always came with strings I could never seem to meet. My mother had a way of speaking that could cut deeper than anything else, always choosing words that hurt the most. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the constant echo of my childhood. My sister was everything I wasn't: graceful, charming, the kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly draw attention. I was the dependable one, the helper, the one who carried groceries, remembered birthdays, showed up early to set up, and stayed late to clean. But reliability doesn't get you a seat at the table when it matters. It just gets you late-night calls asking for help with last-minute errands. This pattern started so early that I thought it was normal. At family gatherings, my accomplishments were mentioned briefly before attention turned back to my sister's newest job, relationship, or trip. I'd sit there, joining in when spoken to, laughing at the right times, quietly playing the role of the supportive background character in their story. By my mid-20s, I started keeping mental scores: how many times I'd been asked to help versus how many times someone genuinely asked how I was doing. The numbers were humiliating. I'd drive 40 minutes to help my uncle move furniture, only to not hear from him for months until he needed another favor. Last year, I even missed my own birthday dinner because I was helping my cousin move apartments. When I finally arrived 2 hours late, they were eating dessert and getting ready to leave. "Oh, we figured you weren't coming," my mother said in that familiar tone she used for her disappointments. For years, I tried to understand what I was doing wrong. What made me so easy to ignore? Was it because I didn't demand attention the way my sister did? Because I didn't make a scene when I was overlooked, but simply accepted it? The truth is, I'd been auditioning for love my entire life, but never got the part. I became the person everyone relied on, but no one truly saw. Always showing up, always helping, always there, until, eventually, I wouldn't be. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The real story began 3 months ago, when I finally realized that being dependable had become my prison. And sometimes, the only way out is to stop being who everyone expects you to be. Between 25 and 28, I spent 3 years trying to earn my family's acceptance, studying their behaviors like a language I was desperate to learn. I believed that if I just tried harder, gave more, showed up more, eventually they'd see me as worthy. I went through a phase where I tried to win affection with gifts. I'd show up to casual dinners with expensive wine no one asked for, flowers for no reason, thoughtful presents based on offhand comments. My sister mentioned yoga. I bought her a premium mat and blocks. My uncle complained about his old coffee maker. I spent weeks researching and got him a high-end espresso machine. "You don't have to do this," they'd say. But I never knew if they meant it or were just being polite. The gifts were always accepted with hollow thanks, then tucked away or passed on to others. I once found the scarf I'd gifted my mother, still in its original packaging, in a church donation bin. I volunteered for everything: moving, airport runs, babysitting, house-sitting. I became the family's unpaid concierge. When my cousin needed someone to watch her cats, I rearranged my vacation. When my aunt held a garage sale, I spent my weekend organizing and dealing with strangers haggling over her old dishes. The worst part was how eager I was to help. I treated every favor like a deposit in some imaginary emotional account that I believed would one day be repaid in love. I told myself that their requests meant I was valued, that they trusted me. But being needed is not the same as being wanted, and that lesson came to me again and again. I was asked to set up parties, but never included in the planning. I took photos, but was rarely in them. I was the driver, but never the one whose opinion mattered about where to go. The breaking point came at my sister's engagement party last spring. I spent the entire day helping, arrived at 6 a.m. to cook, and stayed until midnight to clean. From the kitchen, I watched as they laughed and reminisced about my sister's childhood while I washed dishes. When my uncle raised a toast to everyone who made this possible, his eyes went right past me, to the caterers. I was 10 feet away, apron still on, and completely unseen. Driving home that night, exhausted and hurt, I finally understood something vital. My efforts weren't invisible because I wasn't trying hard enough. They were invisible because my family had already decided who I was, the background helper. And no matter how hard I tried, nothing could change that role. The realization scared me more than it freed me. If I stopped trying, would anyone even notice? Or would they just find someone else to fill my place? 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I made what felt like a radical decision. I wouldn't volunteer to help. I wouldn't ask what to bring. I wouldn't show up early. I wouldn't assume I was invited. The silence was deafening. November 20th passed without a single call about dinner plans. By November 25th, no one had asked if I could pick up chairs or help with setup. By Tuesday, I was convinced I'd finally made myself truly invisible. Then my phone rang. It was my youngest cousin, the only one who ever treated me like a real person. At 19, she had the kind of honesty everyone else in our family had long lost. "Are you really not coming to Thanksgiving?" she asked right away. "No one invited me," I said, trying to sound unaffected. "That's ridiculous. You always come to Thanksgiving." "I always help with Thanksgiving," I corrected. "That's different." There was a pause. Then she admitted, "Mom asked me to call you. She said to tell you dinner's at Uncle's house at 3, same as always." "She asked you to invite me?" I asked. "Not exactly," she said carefully. "She said to see if you were planning to show up and help like usual." The words hit me hard. Even my invitation was about what I could do, not about me being wanted there. "I don't think I'll make it this year," I said quietly. "Maya, please," she said softly. "It's going to be so boring without you. Mom and your sister just talk about people I don't know, and Uncle gets weird and political after his second beer. You're the only one who talks to me like I'm a person." "You could always come have dinner with me instead," I said, knowing she couldn't. "You know I can't. That'd cause World War III. She was right. In our family, loyalty always went upward. Skipping the official gathering would be seen as rebellion. "Just come," she pleaded. "Please, for me." And that was the one reason I couldn't resist. Not because I wanted to be ignored again, but because she asked me, not needed me. "Okay," I said, "I'll come." "Really?" "Really. But I'm not helping with setup, and I'm not staying to clean." "Deal," she said quickly, like she was afraid I'd back out. After I hung up, I stared at my phone, unsure if I'd just broken my own promise. I'd spent months trying to set boundaries, only to bend them at the first emotional pull. But maybe this time would be different. Maybe showing up without overextending myself would make them see me differently. Maybe they'd finally notice I was there by choice, not by obligation. I should have known better. Hope, when you crave belonging, is the cruelest feeling of all. I drove the 43 minutes to my uncle's house that Thanksgiving afternoon, my stomach in knots. I arrived 15 minutes after start time, not early enough to be expected to help, not late enough to seem rude. The driveway was full. Through the windows, I could hear laughter, chatter, dishes clinking, all familiar sounds. Sitting in my car, I felt that old flicker of hope. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe walking in as a guest instead of a helper would change something. I walked up the brick path, carrying only my purse and a simple bottle of wine. Nothing extravagant, just something casual. I knocked, then tried the handle. Like always, locked. That was strange. The door was never locked during family gatherings. I knocked again, louder. The door opened only a few inches. My uncle's face appeared in the gap, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. He looked uneasy, almost guilty. He looked calm but firm, in the same way my mother always did when her mind was made up. "Maya," he said, without moving to open the door any wider. "Hi, Uncle. Sorry I'm a little late. Traffic was worse than I thought. Look, I think there's been some confusion." Behind him, I could see straight into the dining room. The table was set for exactly the number of people already there. No extra chair, no empty plate. Someone was sitting in what had always been my place, my sister's boyfriend, the one she'd been dating for only 3 months. "What kind of misunderstanding?" I asked, though the truth was already sinking in. "This is a family dinner, Maya. Family only." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I am family." "No," he said, his tone final and cold, clearly not a spur-of-the-moment decision. "You're not anymore." "What are you talking about? What does that even mean?" "It means you need to leave. We don't want you here." I looked past him again, hoping to see something that would tell me this was a mistake, a joke maybe, anything. In the kitchen, my mother stood watching. She met my eyes for only a moment before deliberately turning away. "I was invited," I said, my voice smaller than I meant it to be. "My cousin called me." "She shouldn't have. This was already decided." "What decision? Who decided that?" "The family did." "You cause problems, Maya. You make people uncomfortable. This is for the best." I felt like the ground had vanished beneath me. "I cause problems? I'm the one who's always helping everyone, always showing up. Always making people feel guilty with that martyr act." He interrupted, his tone sharp. "Always turning things into how hard you try and how underappreciated you are." The cruelty stunned me. Not just the words, but how deliberate they sounded. This wasn't anger in the heat of an argument. It had been planned, discussed, agreed upon. They had waited until I arrived to deliver the message. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Go home, Maya. Spend the holiday somewhere else." Through the window, I saw my sister laughing at something someone said. My cousin, the one who'd asked me to come, stared at her phone, avoiding eye contact. The whole moment felt unreal, like watching a scene from someone else's life. "Close the door, please," I heard my uncle say to someone behind him. Then the door shut. The sound of the lock clicking into place was deafening. I stood there for a long moment, wine bottle still in my hand, unable to fully process what had happened. Then I turned, walked back to my car, and sat in the driver's seat, staring at the house where my family was eating Thanksgiving dinner without me. That's when I realized I wasn't surprised. Hurt, yes. Angry, definitely. but not surprised. Some part of me had always known this was coming. I drove home in a daze. By the time I parked at my apartment, something inside me had shifted. The shock faded, replaced by a calm determination. They thought they'd blindsided me, but they didn't know I had been preparing for this moment for months. Back in August, I'd started recording family interactions. Not with bad intentions, but because my therapist had suggested I document them. She said it might help me see patterns, especially since I often left family gatherings feeling confused and doubting my own memory of events. Sometimes having a record helps, she'd said. So I began casually recording using the voice memo app on my phone, just hitting record before entering rooms where everyone was gathered. At first, I thought it would show how supportive I was. Instead, it revealed something entirely different. I captured my mother telling my sister I was exhausting, while I was in the next room cooking dinner for her. I caught my uncle complaining that I always needed attention as I washed his dishes. I even heard my sister laughing about how I tried too hard with gifts, mocking the thought I put into choosing them. The worst recording was from my cousin's birthday in October. While I was outside loading leftover cake into my car for an elderly neighbor, they spent 15 minutes talking about how everything was always about me and how tiring I was to deal with. By November, I had almost 2 hours of audio, proof of how they really saw me. Me, the one who never said no, who bent over backward to help, who only ever wanted to belong. After being turned away on Thanksgiving, I went home and spent 3 hours editing the recordings into a 5-minute clip. The most revealing, undeniable parts. My mother's voice saying I was too much work while I organized her kitchen. My uncle calling me pathetic while I fixed his fence. My sister laughing. She probably thinks we appreciate all that stuff she does. I saved the file and titled it What They Really Think. Then I opened my contacts and selected 12 people. My father, who stayed out of family drama but deserved to know. My grandmother, who always asked why I looked so drained after visits. A few aunts and uncles who'd always been kind but probably unaware. And my cousin, the one who'd invited me, because she needed to understand what her invitation had cost me. I attached the file to a group message and wrote, "Since I was told today that I'm no longer family and was barred from Thanksgiving dinner, I thought you should hear what your family really thinks about the person who's shown up for all of you for years. This is 5 minutes from the last 3 months. There's more where this came from." My finger hovered over the send button for nearly 10 minutes. Once I pressed it, there would be no going back. No more pretending, no more hoping, no more accepting scraps and calling them love. I thought about the sound of that door closing, about my sister's boyfriend sitting in my seat while I stood outside. And in that silence, something inside me hardened. They had made their choice. Now everyone else would see what that choice really meant. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and made a Thanksgiving dinner for one. The first honest meal I'd had in years. I kept my phone off for 18 hours. When I turned it on Friday morning, there were 67 missed calls and over 100 messages. The phone started ringing immediately, my uncle's name flashing on the screen. I ignored it and opened the messages. They fell into 3 groups. Confused ones from people who hadn't listened yet. Supportive ones from those who had. and panicked messages from my mother and uncle, desperate for damage control. My grandmother had been the first to reply, just 2 hours after I'd sent it. "Honey, I listened. I had no idea they talked about you like this. It's heartbreaking. Call me when you're ready." My father wrote, "I'm disgusted. Your mother and I need to talk. Are you okay?" Then came messages from extended family, people I barely spoke to outside holidays. "Maya, this explains everything. I always wondered why you seemed so sad at family gatherings." From my aunt in Oregon. "They've been talking about me the same way for years. I just never had proof." From a cousin I hardly knew. "Your mother called me 3 times last night, begging me to delete your message without listening." That told me everything. And finally, the desperate texts from my mother and uncle. Their tone shifted quickly, from denial to excuses to pleading. "Uncle, that recording was taken out of context. You're destroying this family over a misunderstanding." "Mother, I can't believe you would." Secretly recording private conversations is one of the deepest betrayals imaginable. As more people began listening and sharing their own experiences of how my family had treated me, my mother's messages grew more erratic. "You've turned everyone against me with your lies and manipulation. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me. You're not my daughter anymore. You never deserved this family." That last message actually made me laugh. My uncle had already told me I wasn't family anymore, with her quiet approval, so she was simply confirming what had already been decided. The most important message that day came from my younger cousin around noon. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Mom and Uncle talked about you like that when you weren't around. I feel sick. I never should have asked you to come yesterday. I'm leaving Uncle's house right now. Can I come see you?" She arrived at my apartment an hour later, crying before I could even open the door. We sat on my couch as she apologized again and again for unknowingly setting me up for the previous day's humiliation. "I really thought they'd just forgotten to invite you properly," she said. "I didn't know they planned that." "It's not your fault," I told her sincerely. I shook my head. People started leaving. Uncle's house was empty by 8. Grandma called Mom and Uncle and said she was ashamed to be related to them. Dad called Mom and screamed at her for 20 minutes. Everyone's taking sides, and honestly, most are taking yours. As she spoke, my phone kept buzzing with new messages. Family members asking for the recordings. Others sharing stories of how my mother and uncle had spoken badly about them behind their backs. Cracks were appearing in the perfect family image they'd spent years building. Sitting there with my cousin, I realized something powerful. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't trying to manage other people's feelings. I wasn't rushing to fix problems or take blame. I had simply told the truth and left everyone else to deal with it. By Saturday, my family's carefully curated social media presence was collapsing. My mother, obsessed with maintaining the image of a perfect family, made the disastrous choice to post publicly about what she called the betrayal of a troubled family member. Her post read like manipulation disguised as grace. Sometimes loving someone means accepting that they're not healthy enough to be in your life. It breaks my heart to say we had to ask my daughter to leave our family gathering after years of concerning behavior. I'm sharing this because I know some of you received upsetting messages from her, and I want you to know we're getting her the help she needs. Please keep us in your prayers. The post backfired immediately. Family members began commenting, sharing their own experiences. The first was my grandmother. The only concerning behavior I've seen is how you've treated that girl for years. She's been devoted to this family, and you've rewarded her with cruelty. Then came my father, who rarely used social media, creating an account just to reply. I've listened to the audio Maya shared. Anyone who wants to understand the truth should listen too. What I heard was emotional abuse from people who should have protected her. The comment section turned into a battlefield. Relatives, friends, even neighbors weighed in, describing what they'd witnessed over the years. My mother's cutting remarks, my uncle's dismissive behavior, the way I was constantly overlooked. I always wondered why Maya looked so tired at family events. One friend wrote, "Now I understand. She was working the whole time while being treated like an outsider." Another cousin added, "Maya was the only one who visited my mom in the hospital last year. Where was everyone else?" The most painful comment came from my elderly neighbor. "Maya brings me leftovers from her family gatherings because she says there's always too much." Now I realize she was probably giving me her own portion because she wasn't welcome to eat with them. My phone overflowed with messages, support from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old classmates, coworkers, college friends, all shared similar observations. They'd seen me miss events, cancel plans, make excuses, all because I was prioritizing my family's needs over my own. The picture they painted was clear. Years of giving everything to people who treated me like I didn't matter. My therapist scheduled an emergency session that evening. After listening to everything, she said, "Maya, what's happening now, this validation, this support, is how normal families react when someone is being mistreated. They rally around the victim, not the abuser." It feels unreal, I admitted. I spent so long thinking I was the problem. "That's what emotional abuse does," she said gently. "It makes you question your reality, your worth. But the moment you showed proof, everyone recognized the truth." Later, my cousin sent screenshots from a group chat I wasn't in. A conversation between my mother, sister, and uncle. "We need to control the narrative," my mother wrote. "Maya's always been unstable. People need to know we were protecting ourselves." "Maybe we should just apologize," my sister suggested. "Absolutely not," my uncle replied. "Apologizing admits guilt. We stick to the story that Maya is troubled." Reading their calculated discussion, while people publicly defended me, made everything clear. They weren't sorry for how they'd treated me. They were sorry they'd been exposed. Sunday morning, I got an unexpected knock at the door. Through the peephole, I saw my father holding a grocery bag. I hadn't seen him in over a year. After his divorce from my mother, he'd stayed away from her side of the family. "Dad?" I said, opening the door. "I brought breakfast," he said, lifting the bag. "Thought you might not have eaten much lately." He unpacked bagels, cream cheese, orange juice, and fruit. Simple gestures my mother would have criticized. "I listened to the recordings," he said. "All of them." "Dad, I didn't mean to." He stopped me. "I need to apologize, and I need you to let me." He sat across from me, hands wrapped around his mug. "I knew, maybe not every detail, but I knew your mother treated you differently. You were always the one expected to help, to fix, to give. And I said nothing because silence was easier. But silence is a choice, and I chose wrong. You couldn't have known it was this bad," I said automatically. "Yes, I could have," he said quietly. "Every time you looked tired, every time you apologized for things that weren't your fault, I ignored the signs." He reached across and held my hand. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It took courage I don't think I had. Breakfast was calm, no tension, no judgment. It felt like peace. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now I do what I should have done years ago, support my daughter," he said. "Your mother called me, screaming that you destroyed the family. I told her she destroyed it herself. And Maya, none of this is your fault. It's not yours to fix." After he left, I sat in my quiet apartment, feeling unconditional love for the first time. That afternoon, he texted, "Taking Grandma to lunch tomorrow. She wants you there. Would you like to join us?" I smiled, genuinely this time. Maybe I'd lost the family I was born into, but I was finding the one I deserved. December brought a wave of calls my family didn't expect. The first was from my uncle, panicked about unpaid property taxes. I deleted the voicemail. For years, I'd quietly managed their financial issues, car payments, taxes, bills, without acknowledgement. In total, $28,000 over 3 years. Money from my savings and future. They depended on me financially while treating me as a burden. Now, without me covering their costs, everything was collapsing. My uncle called repeatedly. Sigh. My mother left desperate messages about overdue credit cards. My sister texted, "Mom says you're not paying her car anymore. That's so petty." I replied, "I was told I'm not family anymore. Non-family members don't pay each other's bills." By mid-December, I'd received over 40 calls about emergencies. The irony was sharp. The so-called family problem was the one paying their bills. I realized that by stepping away, I'd save $900 a month, money I could finally use for my own life. Christmas morning was peaceful. No 6 a.m. calls, no chaos, no pretending. I woke naturally, made coffee, and opened a gift from my father, a leather journal with a note, "For writing your own story now." I joined my grandmother, father, and a few others for a quiet dinner. We laughed, shared stories, and felt genuine warmth. "This is what family should be," my grandmother said. Comfortable, real. Meanwhile, messages from the other side poured in, my cousin describing their Christmas disaster. Without me organizing everything, chaos reigned. My mother burned the turkey. My uncle argued. My sister's boyfriend asked where I was. "They argued about you for 2 hours," my cousin texted. Everything fell apart. My sister eventually messaged me, "Can you just come later? It's weird without you." I didn't reply. Even in exile, they still wanted me to fix their messes. Instead, I spent the evening writing. I wrote about realizing that being needed isn't the same as being wanted, that love without respect isn't love at all. When my dad called that night, he asked, "Do you think sending those recordings was right?" "Do you?" I asked. "I think you finally stopped setting yourself on fire to keep them warm," he said. "That's never wrong." By New Year's, their chaos no longer touched me. Their problems weren't my emergencies. I spent the night with new friends, a beg in quotes, laughing and watching fireworks. For the first time, I felt excited about my own future. I was no longer living to please others. I was living for me. The following months revealed even more truth. My grandmother began speaking out about my mother's long history of manipulation. Other relatives reached out with their own stories, people my mother had alienated or harmed. The pattern became undeniable. Even my sister wrote me a letter in February, admitting she'd stayed silent because she didn't want to lose her favored position. It was a start, but not enough to rebuild trust. Then came my mother's final attempt at control, a legal threat accusing me of defamation. My father laughed when I showed him. "She's suing you for her own words? Let her try." The letter backfired. More relatives turned away from her. She wasn't sorry. She was just furious she'd lost control of the story. By spring, our family had split into two groups: the old manipulators and those who finally saw the truth. For the first time, I had relationships built on respect, not obligation. I realized how exhausting it had been trying to love people incapable of honesty. A year later, I barely recognized myself. The woman who went to that Thanksgiving dinner, hoping for scraps of affection, was gone. My new apartment reflected my freedom, filled with laughter, peace, and moments of genuine connection. The journal my father gave me now holds pages about growth, learning to say no, discovering who I am beyond their control, finding peace in solitude. I even began writing professionally about emotional abuse and self-worth. My first article, "The Invisible Family Member," reached thousands who saw themselves in my story. Even my love life changed. When you stop accepting crumbs from family, you stop accepting them from anyone. I'm seeing someone kind and emotionally healthy, a person who values me without conditions. He's never met my mother and never will. As for everyone else, my mother still lives in her expensive house, posting online about ungrateful children. My uncle lost properties to foreclosure and drinks more than ever. My sister moved away, sending polite birthday cards but no real remorse. My cousin, the one who stood by me, now lives with grandma. They're thriving together. My father and I have dinner weekly. My grandmother remains my hero, fierce, honest, and finally free. And me? I'm living for myself. I've learned that being alone is better than being surrounded by people who make you feel lonely. Saying no to the wrong ones created space for the right ones to find me. Sometimes people ask if I regret sharing those recordings. I never do. That Thanksgiving, painful as it was, gave me clarity. I stopped pretending cruelty was love or obligation was affection. I grieved the family I thought I had and embraced the one I truly deserved. Today, I choose myself every